Okay, I know we're pretty far ahead of ourselves since All Will Be One has literally just been released, but this EDH deck concept for March of the Machine needed to be done. So today, let's build around Yargle and Multani, who shall be henceforth known as Maltargle. Maltargle is an 18/6 legendary frog spirit elemental that costs 3 black, green, and has no other text except for flavor text, which is amazing. Since it only needs 3 more damage to deal lethal commander damage, we will focus on making that happen. The first step, of course, is to ramp up to 6 mana to cast Maltargle as soon as possible. But we want to have mana left over so we can cast Protection or equip it with protective equipment on the same turn it enters the battlefield. Because there's no way your opponents aren't going to try and stop this monster from making it to your next turn. It's an easy choice to use the standard Soul Ring, Signet, and Talisman package for our artifact ramp and your favorite mana dorks for the creature package. However, since we're pushing for 8 mana available by the time we cast Maltargle, we can also look into the bigger rocks like Basalt Monolith, Hedron Archive, Sisay's Ring, and Thrawn Dynamo to see if we have room in the deck for them. Ronus' Monument would be handy. It'll reduce the cost of your green creatures by 1, and when you cast a green creature, a target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. This would essentially turn your mana dorks late game into combat tricks for Maltargle. Goreclaw, Terror of Kal Sisma will reduce your commander's cost by 2 and give it +1/+1 in trample if Goreclaw attacks with it. Now that ramp is covered, let's look at protection. All of this needs to be cheap so we can improve our chances of being able to use it the same turn that Maltargle hits the battlefield. Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, and Whisper Silk Cloak will protect it as well as help it in combat by giving it haste or unblockable. Tamiyo's Safekeeping and Heroic Intervention can stop Maltargle from being destroyed, while Ashnod's Intervention and Kaya's Ghost Form will let it return to the battlefield if it dies or is exiled. Well, in case of Ashnod's Intervention, it comes back to your hand, but it's still not going to cost. It's not going to cost a lot. Infused with Vitality, Supernatural Stamina, and Feign Death will return it to the battlefield if it dies, particularly to a board wipe. If your opponents have creatures big enough to stop Maltargle, even if it has trample, giving it Death Touch will let you deal 1 damage to whatever creature is blocking it, and then trample the rest to the opponent's face. Battle Rage Blessing will give Death Touch an indestructible, but Touch of Moonglove, Lash of Thorns, and Coat with Venom will give it a little boost alongside that Death Touch. Gaia's Gift is really flexible here. It's an instant for 1 and a green that says put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It gains Reach, Trample, Hexproof, and Indestructible until end of turn. This can be used as both offense and defense, so I would really recommend having this one in your deck. Predator Strike will give a creature +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. If an opponent is completely open, this will end them with a single swing dealing 21 commander damage to their face. Tainted Strike will let Maltargle deal 18 infect damage, so if they can't stop 9 of that damage, they're out of the game through poison damage. There are a lot of combat tricks that will work with Maltargle. Just use the ones you think will be the most effective and fun for you and your playgroup. And speaking about fun things, if you're enjoying the video so far, why don't you do me a favor and like the video and sub to the channel? It'll let the algorithm know you liked it and share the video with other people who might enjoy it also. It'll also help the channel grow, so maybe one day I can just spend most of my time making videos like this in the future. Thanks. Trample is the single most important keyword Maltargle can have. Nylea, God of the Hunt, Bron, Vorak Battlehorns, and Garruk's Uprising will give your creatures static trample, while Maze Skullbomb will give a creature +3/+3 and trample until end of turn and let you draw a card, but it's at sorcery speed and your opponents will see it coming, but still it'll be pretty beefy. Prowling Serpapard is a good protection against being countered, so having it in the deck is probably a good idea also. The biggest problem we're running into with this Voltron strategy in green is drawing cards. Usually, green is casting and drawing cards from attacking or pumping out green creatures, like, with power 4 or greater. But by the time Maltargle comes out, your hand may be a little light. Mask of Griezelbrand might be okay here. It's an equipment for 1 and 2 black with an equip cost of 3 that says equipped creature has flying and lifelink. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life where X is its power. If you do, draw X cards. Even if you don't put this on Maltargle, throwing it on a redundant support creature to draw cards might be worth the trade-off if you find yourself with an empty hand. Triumph of Ferocity is an enchantment that will draw you an extra card at your upkeep if you control the creature with the greatest power, which if Maltargle is on the field, that shouldn't be a problem. Drum Hunter lets you draw a card at your end step if you have a creature with power 5 or greater, and it doubles as a mana door. Shadowheart Dark Justicar might not be a good include, but the option to sacrifice Maltargle to draw 18 cards if you can't save it could make it worth it. If you can get through with combat damage with your mana dorks or other support creatures, Toski might not be a bad include. It'll let you draw a card when a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, but hitting with many creatures isn't exactly our plan. Shaper's Sanctuary is an enchantment for 1 green that will let you draw a card whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls. And since Maltargle is going to get targeted by your opponent's spells, at least when you cast something to protect it, you can draw a card to replace it or draw into an answer if you don't have one on hand. After card draw, the only thing we need to worry about is taking out our opponent's problematic combo pieces or threats. Green has plenty of naturalize effects that will let you destroy enchantments and artifacts, so pick your favorite ones for the deck. Dealing with creatures is a little more difficult, but cards like Ambuscade might be most effective since our commander has 6 toughness. It's an instant for 2 and a green that says target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. Aggressive Instinct is a sorcery for 1 and a green that will have a creature you control deal damage to a target creature an opponent controls. Bite Down is an instant for 1 and a green that does the same thing. Considering the nature of our commander, I think that Ruxa, Patient Professor, is a fantastic include. It's a legendary 4/4 Bear Druid for 2 and 2 green that says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, return target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. Creatures with no abilities get +1/+1. And you may have creatures you control with no abilities assign their combat damage as though they weren't blocked. Imagine dealing 19 commander damage to your opponent's face. Indomitable Might has the same effect, but it also gives the enchanted creature +3/+3, essentially making Maltargle a one-hit unblockable kill. Predatory Focus does the same thing, but it doesn't buff your creatures. I think the interesting thing about this deck is the fact that Yargle worked as a Voltron commander in mono black, but Maltargle having access to green makes it ridiculous. The one-shot potential is clear, and while that's cool, it will also make it difficult to survive against the remaining 2 players who work together to make sure it doesn't get a chance to swing ever again. I think the trick to making this deck work is finding multiple spells with multiple effects that are good in different situations, so you can limit the number of dead cards in your hand at any given point in the match. Ramp might be the most important thing since you're probably going to be casting your commander several times in a match. I'm honestly really excited about this very simple commander. If I end up pulling one, I may as well slap something together and throw down on spell table. It'll be a nice surprise to find that this deck turns out to be way better than anyone actually expects it to be. But anyway, let me know what you think of this Yargle and Multani EDH deck concept in the comments below, as well as your plan for the deck. I always enjoy reading about the cards and interactions that I didn't think about in the comments, so please leave those. I do plan on doing other concepts for the other March of the Machine decks, so keep an eye out for those. But in the meantime, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.